Atlantis. You know the story, right? For thousands of years, it's been the ultimate legend. This incredible, super advanced civilization that just vanished, swallowed by the sea in a single day. It's the greatest story of a lost world ever told. But here's the billion-dollar question. Was it real? Is there actually a lost city at the bottom of the ocean? That's the mystery that's kept people searching for centuries. And today, we're going to dive in and try to figure it out, separating the hard science from the fantastic story. Okay, so first, let's just do a quick refresher on the legend itself. The classic tale describes this immense naval power way out past the Pillars of Hercules. I mean, picture it, an empire with unbelievable wealth, incredible technology, basically a perfect society. But, as the story goes, they got arrogant. They angered the gods, and bam, a cataclysm hits and the whole island sinks, gone forever. It's an amazing story, and it's no wonder people are still obsessed with finding it. All right, let's get into the good stuff. To really understand Atlantis, you have to go back to the one and only place it's ever mentioned, the writings of the Greek philosopher Plato. And when you look really closely at what he actually wrote, a completely different story starts to take shape. So this quote right here, this is the key to the whole puzzle. Plato, speaking through Socrates, isn't asking for a history lesson. He's just laid out his blueprint for a perfect city. But it's like a beautiful painting. It's just sitting there. He wants to see it in motion. He wants a story to show how his perfect citizens would actually behave in a crisis. And this gets us to a really important idea in ancient Greece, mythos versus logos. Think of logos as a factual report, like a news story. But a mythos, that's a tale, a legend, a story you tell to get at a deeper truth. Plato wasn't trying to write history. He was creating a mythos to make a philosophical point. So what does all this mean? It means Atlantis was never supposed to be a real place. It was a thought experiment. It was the fictional bad guy he invented for his fictional good guy Athens, all to see how his ideal society would perform under pressure. Now, Plato had this concept he called the noble lie. It sounds bad, I know. But for him, it was a useful story, a myth you tell people to teach them about virtue and justice. Atlantis wasn't history, it was a morality tale, a lesson. Okay, so if the original Atlantis was just a philosophical story, is that it? Is the show over? Does that mean there are no spectacular lost worlds out there to find? Oh, not even close. In fact, this is where things get really exciting. Because while Plato's Atlantis might be a myth, scientists are finding real lost worlds right now. And for our first mind-blowing example, we're not going to some exotic island in the Mediterranean. Nope, we're going to a place you would never expect, the bottom of Lake Huron in the Great Lakes. Take a look at this. It might seem like just an underwater map, but you are literally looking at a lost world. This is the Alpina Amberley Ridge. And get this, 9,000 years ago, this entire area was dry land. And this wasn't just some empty field. It was a vital, natural land bridge. For almost 2,500 years, it acted like a giant funnel for herds of migrating caribou. And where the caribou went, ancient hunters followed, right across this exact spot. So how on earth do you find a 9,000-year-old hunting ground under 100 feet of water? Well, it's kind of like a high-tech detective story. First, they use computer models to figure out where the ancient riverbeds and bottlenecks would have been. Then they send in the robots, ROVs, to map the most promising areas. And finally, archaeologists, who are also scuba divers, go down to get their hands dirty and see what's actually there. And what they found is just wow. We're talking perfectly preserved stone hunting blinds, drive lanes they built to channel the caribou, even ancient tree stumps still rooted in the lakebed. Because it was flooded so quickly and then left untouched, it's been called a Pompeii-like discovery, a perfect snapshot of a moment in time of a world that was lost. Okay, so we've got a real submerged world. Check. But what about the other half of the Atlantis myth? That idea of a super advanced civilization that collapses in a single catastrophe. For that, we're heading to the Aegean Sea and the incredible mystery of the Minoans. So, around 1600 BC, the volcano on Thera, you probably know it as Santorini, erupted with unbelievable force. For a long time, everyone just assumed this is what killed off the mighty Minoan civilization on the nearby island of Crete. But there's a huge problem. The archaeological evidence shows the Minoan palaces kept humming along for another 100 years or so. So, what gives? Why the delay? So let's look at the before picture. Before the volcano blew its top, the Minoan world was this bustling, complex web of trade routes. It was a healthy, robust system with tons of connections. Then, Thera gets wiped off the map. You'd think that would be a death blow, right? But what's amazing is that the network was resilient. It just rerouted itself. Ships found new ports, goods kept moving, and for a while, it really looked like they had dodged a bullet. But here's the thing about losing a major hub. There were hidden costs. Trade became more expensive, more inefficient. To cope, the system changed. It started consolidating, putting all its eggs in fewer and fewer baskets. The network became less of a web and more like a few thick chains. It made them super efficient, but also incredibly fragile. It worked until it didn't. They reached a tipping point and the whole thing just shattered, seemingly overnight. And this teaches us something so important about how things fall apart. It's not always the big, loud explosion. Sometimes collapse is a slow, quiet death by 1,000 cuts. It's a gradual loss of resilience, of flexibility, that makes a system so brittle that one final shock can just break it completely. So where does that leave us? We've got Plato's brilliant philosophical story, a real-life hunting ground preserved under a lake, and a complex civilization that slowly became too fragile to survive. What do we learn when we look at all of these together? Well, it shows us there are different kinds of lost worlds. Plato's Atlantis was an invention, a tool that teaches us how powerful stories can be for exploring ideas. The Minoan collapse was a systems failure, a warning about how even the strongest systems can become fragile. And the Alpina Amberley Ridge, well, that's proof that real physical worlds are out there, just waiting for us to find them. You see, in the end, the search for Atlantis was never really about finding a physical place. It's something deeper. It taps into our fascination with the biggest stories of all, how great things are built, how they fall apart, and whether they can ever be found again. All of these stories, real and imagined, are like windows into our deep past. They teach us about resilience, about fragility, about what we choose to remember and what gets lost to time. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? When future generations look back at our time, what lost worlds of our era will they be searching for? What stories will they tell about us?